Welcome to Monk's Temple. Find a comfortable position. It doesn't matter if you're sitting, lying down, or standing in a crowded train. Just bring your attention here, to this voice, to this moment. There's nowhere else you need to be right now. Close your eyes if that feels safe. If not, just soften your gaze. Take a breath. A deep one. Let your shoulders drop. There's something we all carry that we don't talk about enough. It's not a physical weight. You can't see it, but you can feel it. It's the weight of the question. The question that arrives when life stops making sense. When the phone rings at 2 a.m. When the doctor's face changes. When you come home to an empty house that used to be full. The question is simple. It cuts through everything. What did I do to deserve this? We ask it automatically. It's almost a reflex. Something bad happens and immediately the mind goes searching for the cause. And because we've been raised in a culture that has swallowed a certain story about how the universe works, the mind usually lands on the same answer. This is karma. I must have done something. This is payback. This is cosmic justice finally catching up with me. But here's the uncomfortable truth we're going to sit with tonight. That understanding of karma, the one that makes you the guilty defendant in the courtroom of the universe, is not what the Buddha taught. It never was. And believing it doesn't just add suffering to pain. It can become a prison that keeps you trapped for an entire lifetime. We need to talk about a woman named Priya. Priya was a pediatric nurse in a large city hospital. For 23 years, she held the hands of dying children. She comforted parents whose worlds had collapsed. She worked double shifts without complaint. She was the person other nurses came to when they couldn't hold it together anymore. She wasn't religious in any formal sense, but she believed deeply in goodness. She believed that if you put enough good into the world would eventually be good to you. At 51, she found a lump. By the time they caught it, the cancer had spread. She went through treatment with the same stoicism she brought to everything else. She told herself this was just another challenge, another patient she had to help, except the patient was her own body. And when the treatments failed, when the doctors told her there was nothing more they could do, she didn't break down crying about death. That wasn't the thought that undid her. The thought that broke Priya was this. I've spent my entire life helping others. I've never smoked. I've never drank. I exercised. I was kind. So why? What did I do wrong? What did I miss? If karma is real, how could this be happening to someone like me? She spent her last months not in peace, but in confusion. Not grieving her life, but auditing it. Searching for the hidden sin, the secret bad deed that must have triggered this punishment. Her suffering wasn't just physical. It was existential. The universe had broken its contract, and she was left trying to figure out which fine print she had missed. This is what the popular version of karma does to us. It takes the natural human question why and turns it into an accusation. It tells us that suffering is always earned. That illness is moral failure. That trauma is a lesson we needed to learn. It transforms the chaotic, messy, often random nature of existence into a tidy moral spreadsheet. And when you're the one with the terminal diagnosis, or the one grieving a loss, or the one whose life has fallen apart despite your best efforts, that spreadsheet becomes an indictment. But the Buddha never taught that life was fair. In fact, his entire teaching begins with the observation that life is fundamentally unsatisfactory, fundamentally marked by dukkha. Not because you're being punished, but because that's the nature of conditioned existence. Things change. They fall apart. They disappoint. This is the first noble truth, not a judgment on your moral character. Tonight, we're going to do something that might feel uncomfortable at first. We're going to set aside everything you think you know about karma. We're going to look at where that popular understanding actually came from. And then, slowly, carefully, we're going to rebuild it from the ground up. Not as a cosmic law of fairness, but as something far more intimate, far more psychological, and ultimately far more liberating. We're going to look at what the Buddha actually taught about action and its results, and why that teaching, properly understood, doesn't add blame to your suffering. It offers a way out of it. But before we go any deeper, I want to invite you to make this journey a regular part of your life. If these words are resonating, if something in you is recognizing a truth you've always sensed but never heard articulated, then please consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. We gather here each week to explore these teachings not as abstract philosophy, but as tools for living. As ways of understanding your own mind. As paths through the suffering that everyone eventually encounters. Hit the subscribe button below. It's a small gesture, but it tells the algorithms that this kind of content matters. And it ensures we can continue walking this path together. Now, let's go back to Priya. Because the tragedy of her story isn't that she got sick. The tragedy is that she spent her final months blaming herself for something that wasn't her fault. The tragedy is that the very framework she turned to for understanding became the source of her deepest anguish. And that happens to millions of people every single day. It happens because we've been sold a version of karma that the Buddha would not recognize. So where did this version come from? The answer takes us to Victorian England, to a Russian immigrant named Helena Blavatsky, and to a spiritual movement that fundamentally reshaped how the West understands Eastern ideas. But we'll get to that. First, we need to sit with the discomfort of what we're about to unlearn. Because unlearning isn't easy. It asks us to let go of explanations that made us feel safe, even if those explanations also made us feel guilty. It asks us to tolerate uncertainty. And that's exactly what the path requires. For now, just sit with this. You are not being punished by the universe. The bad things that have happened to you are not necessarily your fault. The question, "What did I do to deserve this?" may be the wrong question entirely. There's another question waiting underneath it. A question that can actually set you free. We'll find that question together as we go deeper. Take a breath. Let this land. And when you're ready, we'll continue. Let's take another breath together. Just feel the air moving in and out of your body. Notice how it requires no effort. The breath breathes itself. In the same way, life lives itself through you. And sometimes, life brings pain. Sometimes it brings confusion. The question isn't how to avoid that. The question is how to meet it without making it worse. We left Priya in her hospital room, searching her memory for the hidden sin that must have caused her cancer. This search, this desperate attempt to find moral meaning in physical illness, is not natural to human beings. It's learned. It's a story we've absorbed. And to understand how we absorbed it, we need to travel back in time. The year is 1875. In New York City, a tall, intense woman with coiled hair and penetrating eyes founds an organization called the Theosophical Society. Her name is Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. She's a fascinating, controversial, deeply complicated figure. By all accounts, she possessed genuine psychic abilities. She traveled extensively in India and Tibet. She read Buddhist texts in translation. She understood, at least intellectually, concepts like rebirth and karma. But she was also a product of her time, and her time was the Victorian era. The Victorian mind craved order. It craved systems. It craved moral clarity. Darwin had shaken the foundations of religious certainty. The Industrial Revolution was transforming society. People wanted reassurance that beneath all the chaos, there was a cosmic rulebook. Blavatsky gave it to them. In her monumental work, The Secret Doctrine, published in 1888, she wrote something that would change the course of spiritual history. She described karma as, and I'm quoting directly here, the ultimate law of the universe, the source, origin and fount of all other laws which exist throughout nature. She called it, the unerring law which adjusts effects to causes, wisely, intelligently, and equitably. Listen to those words again. Ultimate law. Unerring. Adjusts equitably. This is not the Buddha's teaching. This is Victorian morality projected onto the cosmos. This is the idea that the universe is a courtroom, that every action is meticulously recorded, that every effect is perfectly matched to its cause by a wise and intelligent cosmic judge. The Buddha never said any of this. The word he used was karma, a Pali word that simply means action. Deed. Doing. That's it. No laws. No guarantees. No cosmic courthouse. In the Satanya Sutta, one of the oldest discourses we have, the Buddha is recorded saying, intention, monks, is what I call karma. For having intended, one acts by body, speech, or mind. This is radically different from Blavatsky's version. The Buddha anchors the entire teaching in the mind, in the quality of your intention in the moment of acting. Not in some external cosmic ledger. Not in a universal law that balances accounts. In the mind itself. Think about what this means. If karma is intention, then it's not about whether your action succeeds or fails. It's not about whether anyone notices. It's not about whether you get rewarded or punished later. It's about the direction of your mind right now. In this very moment, as you listen to these words, your mind is moving in some direction. It might be toward grasping, trying to hold on to these ideas. It might be toward aversion, resisting what you're hearing. It might be toward understanding, simply receiving. That movement, that quality of mind, that's karma. Happening right now. Blavatsky's version spread like wildfire. It was digestible. It made sense to people raised on Christian ideas of divine judgment, but who wanted something more exotic, more Eastern. By the early 1900s, the word karma had entered the English language, not with its original meaning of action, but with this new meaning of cosmic payback. What goes around comes around. You reap what you sow. Then came the 1960s and 70s. The New Age movement embraced Blavatsky's version and turbocharged it. Karma became a tool for manifestation. Think positive thoughts to create positive karma to get positive results. Your thoughts create your reality. You are the architect of your destiny. This sounds empowering. And in some ways, it is. It gives you a sense of control. But let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was a successful entrepreneur. He had read all the books. He visualized his success. He practiced affirmations. He believed with his whole heart that positive thinking created positive reality. And for years, it seemed to work. His company grew. His wealth accumulated. His life looked perfect from the outside. Then his daughter was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder. There was nothing he could have done to prevent it. Nothing she did caused it. It was just a random mutation, a cruel roll of the genetic dice. But Marcus couldn't accept that. His entire worldview was built on the idea that you create your own reality. Which meant, if he was honest with himself, that he must have somehow created this. That his daughter's suffering was somehow his fault. That his positive thinking hadn't been positive enough, or consistent enough, or pure enough. The law of attraction, the belief that you manifest your own circumstances, becomes a torture device when circumstances refuse to cooperate. It tells the mother of a stillborn child that she must have had a negative thought during pregnancy. It tells the victim of assault that they attracted their attacker. It blames the vulnerable for their vulnerability. This is not empowerment. This is spiritual abuse dressed in New Age clothing. And it has its roots in Blavatsky's Victorian reinterpretation of karma, not in anything the Buddha actually taught. The Buddha's teaching on karma was never about control. It was about understanding. It was never about getting what you want. It was about understanding the nature of wanting itself. It was never about making the universe fair. It was about finding freedom within the unfairness. So let's sit with this for a moment. If you've been carrying the weight of believing that your suffering is your fault, that you must have done something to deserve the hard things in your life, can you feel how heavy that weight is? Can you feel the exhaustion of constantly auditing your thoughts, your actions, your past, searching for the mistake that explains your pain? What if you could put that weight down? What if the universe isn't keeping score? What if karma isn't about punishment at all? What if it's something far more intimate, far more immediate, and far more workable? We're going to explore that in the coming parts. But for now, just practice this. Take a breath. And as you breathe out, imagine releasing the need to have everything make sense. Imagine releasing the need to find someone to blame, even if that someone is yourself. Just for this moment, let it be enough that you're breathing. That you're here. That you're listening. The path doesn't require you to have all the answers. It only requires you to stay present with the questions. Let's settle back into the rhythm of the breath. In and out. No need to control it. Just observing. This witnessing awareness is the most important tool you have. It's what the Buddha asked us to cultivate. Not belief, but direct seeing. We've been talking about what karma isn't. It isn't cosmic justice. It isn't a moral ledger. Now we need to talk about what it actually is. To do that, we need a new metaphor. Not the courtroom. Something more organic, more alive. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a vast field. This field has been here for thousands of years. Generations of people have walked across it, planted in it, fought on it, loved on it, died on it. The soil contains their stories. Some areas are rich and dark. Others are rocky and thin. Some get abundant sunlight. Others are shaded. This field is your mind. You didn't create it. You inherited it. The terrain was shaped by your parents, your culture, your genetics, the random accidents of circumstance. The field was here before you arrived. Now, every day, you walk across this field. Every time you act, speak, or think with intention, you are planting a seed. Some seeds are small. A fleeting thought of irritation. A brief moment of generosity. These are like dandelion seeds, here today, gone tomorrow. Other seeds are larger. A sustained pattern of kindness. A habit of self-criticism. These are like oak trees. They root deeply and shape the landscape for decades. This is karma. Not punishment. Not reward. Planting. Let me tell you about James. James grew up in a household filled with anger. His father was volatile. His mother responded with silence. By 12, the field of his mind was packed hard with fear. The streams were polluted with suspicion. At 30, James discovered meditation. He started sitting every morning. He began to notice the seeds he was automatically planting. The quick judgments. The defensive postures. For the first time, he saw he had a choice. He could keep planting the same old seeds, or he could try something new. He started small. When a colleague made a mistake, instead of rehearsing an angry response, he took a breath and said nothing. That was a seed. When his partner came home late, instead of accusing, he asked if everything was okay. Another seed. When he caught himself ruminating on past injustices, he gently returned to his breath. Another seed. For months, nothing seemed to change. The old habits were still there. James wondered if he was wasting his time. But seeds work silently. Underground. Invisible. You don't see them growing until one day, a small green shoot pushes through. That moment came about a year later. His father, now elderly and ill, was in the hospital. James sat by the bed, watching this man who had caused him so much pain. The old James would have been consumed by resentment. But something was different. The field had changed. The new seeds had grown roots. James looked at his father and saw, not a monster, but a frightened old man who had also inherited a damaged field. And in that moment, James felt something new. Compassion. It rose from somewhere, from those tiny seeds he had been planting for a year. And it was real. This is karma working. Not as punishment or reward. Just as the natural result of planting. James had planted seeds of patience, of kindness, of letting go. When conditions were right, those seeds sprouted. Notice what didn't happen. His childhood wasn't erased. The trauma wasn't undone. The old seeds were still there. But they were no longer the only thing growing. The field had become more diverse. New plants had grown up alongside the old weeds. That changed everything. The Buddha's teaching on karma is not about erasing the past. It's about transforming the present so the future can be different. It's not about a perfect field with no weeds. It's about learning to plant wisely and accept that the field will always be what it is, while knowing that what it becomes is partly up to you. Modern neuroscience confirms this. The brain changes with experience. Every time you practice patience, you strengthen patience. Every time you choose kindness, you make kindness more accessible. This is not magic. It's neurobiology. It's exactly what the Buddha described. So here's the actionable part. Right now, you are planting seeds. The quality of your attention as you listen is a seed. The way you speak to yourself when this ends will be a seed. You are always planting. The only question is whether you're planting consciously or unconsciously. Take a moment. What seeds are you planting right now? Worry about tomorrow plants anxiety. Gratitude for this moment plants contentment. Self-judgment plants self-criticism. Simple presence plants wisdom. None of this is about being good or bad. It's not about earning points. It's about understanding that your mind is a field, and you are always gardening. The question isn't whether you'll garden. It's whether you'll garden with awareness. Let's take another breath together. Just feel the natural rhythm of your body. No need to change anything. Just be here, with whatever is present. Maybe there's calm. Maybe there's restlessness. Maybe there's boredom or curiosity. Whatever is here is welcome. This is your field, right now, in this moment. We've established that karma is planting seeds in the field of your mind. But there's something else we need to understand, something that makes this teaching both more complex and more merciful. Not all seeds are equal. Not all actions carry the same weight. And understanding this can free you from the exhausting project of trying to be perfect. Let me introduce you to Sarah and Michael. They were siblings, raised in the same house by the same parents. Same field, you might think. But their experience of that field was completely different. Sarah was the older sister. From childhood, she carried a sense of responsibility. When her parents fought, she tried to mediate. When her younger brother was upset, she tried to comfort him. She developed a habit of putting others first, of managing everyone's emotions, of sacrificing her own needs for the peace of the family. By the time she was 30, this habit had become automatic. She couldn't say no. She couldn't rest without guilt. She couldn't prioritize her own well-being without feeling selfish. The seeds she had planted, seeds of care and responsibility, had grown into trees so large they blocked out the sun. What began as kindness had become a prison. Michael, the younger brother, had a different experience. He was the baby, the one who was protected. When things got hard at home, he retreated into his room, into his books, into his own world. He learned that the way to survive was to disconnect, to not feel too much, to observe from a distance. By 30, he was successful in his career but emotionally unavailable. He couldn't connect deeply. He couldn't tolerate intimacy. He couldn't stay present when things got real. The seeds he had planted, seeds of withdrawal and self-protection, had also grown into something massive. Same childhood. Same field. Two completely different karmic trajectories. Why? Because the seeds they planted, the habits they cultivated, were different. And those habits, repeated thousands of times over decades, became the landscape of their lives. The Buddha identified 5 actions of such immense weight that they reshaped the entire karmic trajectory. Killing your mother, killing your father, killing an enlightened being, wounding a Buddha with malicious intent, and creating a schism in the monastic community. These are the boulders, the actions that send massive ripples through the field. But for most of us, our lives are not about boulders. They're about pebbles. Thousands and thousands of pebbles, dropped into the pond day after day. A harsh word here. A moment of generosity there. A rush of jealousy. A wave of gratitude. An hour lost in worry. A minute of genuine presence. Each pebble creates a ripple. And over time, the pattern of ripples becomes the character of the pond. This is where the teaching becomes actionable. You don't need to worry about the boulders. You probably aren't killing anyone or creating schisms. What you're doing, every single day, is dropping pebbles. And those pebbles are shaping your life. Let me tell you about Anita. Anita was a lawyer in her late 40s. Successful, respected, financially secure. But she was miserable. She woke up every morning with a knot in her stomach. She spent her days in a state of low-grade anxiety, waiting for something to go wrong. She snapped at her assistants, argued with her husband, lay awake at night rehearsing conversations that hadn't happened. When she came to a meditation retreat, she was desperate. She had tried everything. Therapy, medication, exercise, diet changes. Nothing touched the underlying anxiety. She wanted the teacher to give her some advanced practice, some secret technique that would finally fix her. The teacher asked her a simple question. "What did you have for breakfast this morning?" Anita was confused. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Humor me," the teacher said. "I had coffee," Anita said. "And a piece of toast. I ate it at my desk while checking emails." "And yesterday?" the teacher asked. "Same. Coffee and toast. At my desk." "And the day before?" Anita paused. "I don't remember." "Probably the same." The teacher nodded. "So for years, you've been planting the same seed every morning. Rushing. Multitasking. Not present. That's one seed. Then you go to work, and you plant more seeds. Worry seeds. Irritation seeds. Control seeds. By evening, you've planted hundreds of seeds, and almost all of them are the same. Anxiety. Impatience. Disconnection." Anita started to argue, then stopped. She saw it. The teacher wasn't blaming her. He was just describing the pattern. For decades, she had been dropping the same pebbles into the same pond. And the pond had become a certain kind of pond. Of course she was anxious. Of course she was miserable. The field of her mind had been planted with the same crops for 40 years. What else could grow there? This is the weight of karma. Not as punishment, but as accumulated habit. The mind becomes what it repeatedly does. This is not a moral statement. It's a description of how conditioning works. If you practice worry, you become a worrier. If you practice gratitude, you become grateful. If you practice kindness, you become kind. The seed becomes the tree. The tree becomes the forest. The forest becomes the landscape you live in. The good news is that you can start planting different seeds at any moment. You don't have to fix the whole forest today. You just have to drop one different pebble. Just one. Anita started small. The next morning, instead of eating at her desk, she sat by the window. Just for 5 minutes. She looked at the sky. She tasted her coffee. She didn't check her phone. That was one pebble. The next day, she did it again. Another pebble. A week later, she noticed something small. On her way to work, she caught herself starting to worry about a meeting, and instead of diving into the worry, she took one breath and looked out the window at the passing trees. That was a new pebble too. Not because she eliminated the worry, but because she introduced something else alongside it. Awareness. Choice. Months later, Anita reported that she was still anxious. The old seeds were still there. But the forest had changed. There were clearings now. There were paths she hadn't noticed before. There was space between the trees. The anxiety was still present, but it no longer filled the entire landscape. This is the work. Not eliminating the old karma, but planting new seeds alongside it. Not achieving a perfect mind, but cultivating a more diverse, more spacious, more alive field. The weight of your actions matters, but so does their direction. And you can change direction at any time. Right now, in this breath, you can plant something new. Let's pause and feel the weight of your own body. Just for a moment. The shoulders. The hands. The place where your back meets whatever is supporting you. This body, this mind, this moment. It's all you ever really have. And in this moment, you have the capacity to choose. Not to control everything. Not to fix everything. Just to choose the next seed. We've been talking about planting seeds, about how karma is the accumulated habit of mind. But there's a deeper layer we need to explore. A layer that often gets missed in the popular conversations about karma. It's about timing. About when seeds ripen. Because if you're waiting for cosmic justice to show up on your schedule, you'll wait forever. And you'll miss what's actually happening right now. Let me introduce you to a man named David. David was a fisherman in a small coastal village. Not a wealthy man, but a content one. He had a simple philosophy. Be kind to your neighbors, work hard, take care of your family, and life will take care of you. For years, this philosophy seemed to work. His nets were full. His children were healthy. His wife laughed easily. Life was good. Then the fishing industry changed. Big corporations came with massive boats that emptied the waters. The small fisherman couldn't compete. David watched his livelihood disappear over the course of 2 years. He couldn't feed his family. He couldn't pay his bills. He couldn't sleep at night. And here's where the karma question gets sharp. David looked at his life and asked, what did I do wrong? I was kind. I worked hard. I took care of my family. Why is this happening to me? He searched his memory for some hidden sin, some moment of cruelty or greed that would explain his suffering. He found nothing. And that nothing became its own kind of torment. If he couldn't find a cause, then the universe was random and meaningless. And somehow, that felt worse than being punished. This is the trap of expecting karma to follow your schedule. David's suffering was real. It was caused by economic forces far beyond his control, by corporate greed, by technological change, by 1,000 conditions that had nothing to do with his personal moral history. But because he believed that suffering must be karmic, he turned his confusion inward and made it about his own worth. The Buddha taught that karma ripens in different ways and at different times. Some karma ripens immediately. You snap at someone and feel the contraction in your chest right away. That's karma. You help a stranger and feel a warmth spreading through you. That's also karma. Immediate. Visible. Unmistakable. Other karma ripens later in this same lifetime. The habit of daily exercise doesn't transform your body in a day, but over years, it does. The habit of daily criticism doesn't destroy a relationship overnight, but over decades, it will. This is karma working on a longer timeline. You plant the seeds, you water them, and eventually, the harvest comes. And some karma, the texts say, ripens in future lives. This is the hardest for the modern mind to grasp. But the principle is the same. Momentum continues. The trajectory of your mind, the habits you cultivate, the seeds you plant, they don't just disappear when this body dies. They continue. Not because a judge in the sky carries them forward, but because that's how momentum works. A river doesn't stop when it reaches the ocean. It becomes the ocean. Something continues. Let me tell you about two farmers, old friends named Thomas and William. They lived in the same valley, farmed the same soil, faced the same weather. Thomas was a man of immense generosity. When his neighbor's barn burned down, Thomas showed up with lumber and labor. When the village needed a new well, Thomas contributed more than he could afford. When travelers passed through, Thomas shared his meal. He didn't do this for reward. He did it because generosity was simply his nature. It was the only way he knew to be alive. William was different. He was a good man in his own way, but his primary concern was always himself. He calculated. He protected his resources. He helped when it was convenient, when there was something in it for him, when the social pressure was too great to ignore. He didn't harm anyone deliberately. He just never extended himself for anyone else. For decades, from the outside, their lives looked similar. Both had good years and bad years. Both faced losses. Both experienced joys. The cosmic spreadsheet, if there was one, seemed to be balancing things about the same for both men. Then old age came. Thomas, now in his 80s, fell ill. He couldn't work. He couldn't care for himself. And the village showed up. The people whose barn he had helped rebuild brought food. The families who had shared his meals brought medicine. The children he had played with, now grown, sat by his bed and held his hand. He didn't die alone. He didn't die in want. He died surrounded by gratitude, by connection, by love that had grown from the seeds he planted decades earlier. William also fell ill. And he died alone. Not because the village was cruel, but because he had planted no seeds of connection. No one owed him anything. No one felt the pull of gratitude. He had spent a lifetime protecting himself, and in the end, his protection was complete. He was completely alone. This is karma ripening. Not as punishment from the universe. Not as a moral verdict. Just as the natural result of planting. Thomas had spent decades planting seeds of generosity, and in his final days, that garden produced its harvest. William had spent decades planting seeds of self-protection, and that garden produced its own harvest. Same weather. Same valley. Same aging bodies. Completely different experiences of dying. Notice that the universe didn't strike William with lightning. It didn't reward Thomas with wealth. The reward and the punishment were built into the very fabric of their lives, into the relationships they had cultivated, into the minds they had shaped. This is what the Buddha meant when he said that intention is karma. Not because intention triggers a cosmic response, but because intention shapes the only thing you truly inhabit. Your own mind, your own experience, your own life. So here's the practical takeaway. You can stop waiting for cosmic justice. You can stop auditing your past for hidden sins. You can stop demanding that the universe explain itself on your timeline. Instead, you can look at the seeds you're planting right now. Not because you're trying to control the future, but because the act of planting with awareness is itself the point. It's itself the practice. It's itself the path. What seeds are you planting in this moment? Are you planting connection or separation? Generosity or withholding? Presence or distraction? These small choices, repeated thousands of times, become the landscape of your life. And you get to choose, right now, which seeds to drop. Let's take a moment to feel your breath again. Just the simple sensation of air moving in and out. This breath has never happened before and will never happen again. The past is gone. The future hasn't arrived. There's only this. And in this, you have a choice. We've been building a picture of karma that's very different from the popular version. Not cosmic justice, but habit formation. Not reward and punishment, but planting and harvesting. Now we need to go deeper. The Buddha wasn't trying to help you get better karma. He was trying to help you get free from karma altogether. Let that land. The goal isn't to become a good person who gets good things. The goal is freedom from the entire process of becoming. This is where Buddhism parts company with other paths. Christianity wants to save you from sin. Hinduism wants better rebirth. The New Age movement wants to manifest your best life. Buddhism wants to liberate you from the whole game. Not just from suffering, but from the conditions that make suffering possible. Let me tell you about Grace. Grace was spiritually successful by conventional standards. 30 years of meditation. Retreats in Asia. Famous teachers. She was kind, calm, generous, wise. People came to her for advice. Her life looked like the advertisement for doing the work. And Grace was miserable. Not in an obvious way. Not depressed or anxious. Her misery was more subtle. It was the misery of still wanting. Still striving. Still measuring herself against an invisible standard. She had spent 3 decades trying to be good, trying to accumulate good karma, trying to purify her mind. She was exhausted. She had become a very polished version of someone still trapped. One day, a young monk visited her community. Just a kid, 22 years old, fresh from ordination. Grace was assigned to host him. But instead of asking questions, he asked her one. "Who is it," he said, "who wants to be free?" Grace opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. She realized she had no idea. For 30 years, she had been working on herself. But who was this self? Who was the one doing all this work? In that moment of not knowing, something shifted. The striving fell away. Not because she succeeded, but because she saw the striver was a construction. A habit. Seeds pretending to be a gardener. This is what the Buddha pointed toward. Not accumulating good karma, but uprooting the thing that creates karma. The sense of self. The belief that there's someone inside who needs to get somewhere. When that's seen through, actions no longer create momentum. They're still performed. The body moves. The mouth speaks. But no one clings to results. No one demands more. The texts describe the enlightened being as one who still experiences past karma. The body still gets sick. Pain still arises. But no new karma is created. Why? No craving. No aversion. No identification. Pain is just pain. It doesn't become my pain, my suffering, my problem. Let me share a story about Robert. Robert was a successful surgeon. He spent his life in the operating room, saving lives. By every measure, he was good at it. Skilled hands. Sharp mind. Steady nerves. But Robert hated himself. Not dramatically. Just quietly, persistently. He drove himself mercilessly. Hardest cases. Longest shifts. Never said no. Never rested. Never felt he'd done enough. Why? Deep down, Robert believed if he did enough good, he would finally be good. If he saved enough lives, his own life would feel worthwhile. He was using good karma as a drug, trying to medicate a wound that good karma could never reach. The wound wasn't in his past. It wasn't caused by something he'd done. The wound was the structure of self. The feeling that someone here needs to be better, needs to prove something. That feeling is the engine of karma. It keeps us planting, striving, becoming. And it can never be satisfied by anything it produces. Robert discovered this slowly. Through therapy, meditation, honest inquiry. He had to stop trying to be good and investigate who wanted to be good. He had to stop using kindness to earn love and just be kind because kindness happens when self gets out of the way. He had to stop measuring his karma and rest in awareness that holds all karma without being touched by it. This is the destination. Not better karma. No karma. Not a better self. No self to improve. Freedom from the project of having a life that needs to be better. Here's the paradox. The path to no karma goes through karma. You can't jump over the process. You have to work with the field. Plant good seeds. Cultivate kindness, patience, wisdom. Not because these save you, but because they prepare ground for deeper seeing. A mind caught in greed and hatred can't see clearly. It's too busy defending, attacking, grasping. Only a mind calmed by good karma has clarity to see beyond karma. So you practice. You plant seeds. You tend the garden. But with a different attitude. Not earning reward, but preparing for freedom. Not becoming good, but expressing goodness already here when self steps aside. Not accumulating merit, but loosening the grip of the one who accumulates. This is the middle path. Not indulgence, not self-torture. Not grasping for good karma, not rejecting action. Just patient, compassionate work of planting wisely while seeing through the planter. Showing up, moment after moment, seed after seed, until one day you realize you were never the gardener. You were always the field. Let's settle into the breath again. Just notice the natural rhythm. The body breathing itself. The mind thinking itself. The moment unfolding itself. You don't have to do anything. Just be here, present, aware. This awareness is your most reliable companion. It's been with you through everything. We've covered a lot of ground. Karma as planting seeds. Karma as habit formation. Karma as something to eventually be free from. But there's one more layer we need to explore. A layer that most teachings skip. It's the danger zone. The place where the path itself becomes a prison. Let me tell you about Chloe. Chloe was brilliant, sensitive, and deeply committed to her spiritual practice. She discovered Buddhism in her late 20s and threw herself into it completely. She read every book. She attended every retreat. She meditated for hours daily. She became vegan, then raw vegan. She meticulously tracked her every thought, analyzing each one for its karmic potential. I had this thought of irritation at my boss today, she told me once, her voice tight with anxiety. That's unwholesome, right? That's going to create bad karma. I did loving kindness meditation for him for 20 minutes, but I still felt the irritation underneath. What's wrong with me? Why can't I purify this? Do you hear what's happening? Chloe had turned the path into spiritual OCD. Every moment became a karmic audit. Every mistake felt like accruing debt. Her meditation, meant to bring peace, had become a battleground where she was perpetually losing to her own thoughts. She was more anxious, more self-critical, more miserable than before she started. This is the control trap. It happens when we take the teaching of karma and, instead of using it to understand the mind, we use it to control the mind with an iron fist. We forget the mind is a wild, natural process. Thoughts arise. Some are kind, some angry, some absurd. The karma isn't in the first thought. That's just a seed from the past popping up. The karma is in the second thought. The thought that engages, that dwells, that builds a story, that hates itself for having the first thought. Let me share a story about a meditation teacher I once knew. His name was Ajahn Sumana. He was an old Thai monk with a crooked smile and eyes that seemed to see right through you. One day, a student came to him with the same problem as Chloe. She was tormented by thoughts she considered unwholesome. She wanted them gone. She wanted to be pure. Ajahn Sumana listened patiently. Then he asked her a question. If a bird flies over your head and casts a shadow on the ground, does the ground become the bird? The woman was confused. No, she said. The ground is still the ground. The shadow just passes over. Exactly, the old monk said. Thoughts are like birds. They fly over. They cast shadows. But you are the ground. Not the bird. Not the shadow. The ground. Let them pass. This is the insight Chloe was missing. She had identified with the birds. She thought the angry thoughts were her karma, were her failure. So she fought them, which only made more birds come. More angry thoughts about having angry thoughts. More judgment about her judgment. More karma on top of karma. The Buddha's teaching on skillful action is not a call to perfectionism. It's a call to awareness. It's not about never having an unwholesome thought. That's impossible for an unenlightened being. It's about seeing the thought, recognizing it, and choosing not to water it. It's about having the thought of irritation at your boss, noticing it, and gently bringing attention back to your breath, without adding a layer of self-judgment about having the thought. Let me tell you about Marcus, who was different from Chloe. Marcus also struggled with difficult thoughts. He had a history of trauma, and his mind generated images and stories that were sometimes disturbing, sometimes violent, sometimes just strange. For years, he fought them. He tried to push them away. He judged himself harshly for having them. The fight exhausted him. Then he learned a different approach. He started treating his mind like the sky and his thoughts like weather. Some days were sunny. Some days had thunderstorms. He didn't control the weather. He just watched it pass. When a disturbing thought arose, he would say to himself, "Ah, there's that pattern again. Interesting." And he would return to his breath. Gradually, the thoughts lost their power. Not because they stopped coming, but because he stopped fighting them. He stopped identifying with them. He stopped believing they meant something about him. They were just weather. Passing through. And he was the sky, unchanged by any storm. This is the middle way between indulging thoughts and fighting them. Between believing every thought and being terrorized by them. It's the path of awareness. Of watching. Of letting be. The practical takeaway is simple but not easy. When difficult thoughts arise, notice them. Don't believe them. Don't fight them. Just notice. Say to yourself, thinking. And come back to the breath. Again and again. Thousands of times. This is the practice. This is how you stop creating new karma from old patterns. This is how you become the ground instead of the bird. Chloe eventually learned this. It took time. It took patience. It took failing over and over. But slowly, the grip loosened. She stopped auditing her thoughts and started observing them. She stopped fighting herself and started befriending herself. The anxiety didn't disappear completely, but it no longer ran her life. She had found a different relationship with her own mind. This is available to you too. Right now, in this moment, you can practice. Notice what thoughts are passing through. Don't grab them. Don't push them away. Just watch. You are the sky, not the weather. You are the ground, not the bird. Rest in that awareness. It's always here. It's never been damaged by any thought. It's your original nature. Let's return to the breath. Just feel the air moving in and out. Nothing to achieve. Nothing to fix. Just this moment. The breath reminds us we can begin again. We've explored karma as planting, as habit, as something to transcend. Now the practical part. How do we actually live this? Let me tell you about Elena. Elena was a busy mother of 3, a nurse, a wife caring for aging parents. She had 10 minutes in the morning before kids woke up. She felt guilty. She thought she wasn't practicing properly. Then she met a visiting teacher. She confessed her guilt. "Elena," he said, "you're meditating all day long. You just don't know it." She was confused. "I barely sit formally at all." Every time you comfort a crying child with full attention, that's meditation. Every time you listen without planning your response, that's meditation. Every time you choose patience instead of snapping, that's meditation. You're planting seeds constantly. The question isn't whether you're practicing. The question is what you're practicing. This reframed everything. Elena stopped measuring practice in minutes on a cushion. She noticed her attention in daily life. When she rushed through breakfast, she planted anxiety. When she paused to really look at her child's face, she planted connection. When she drove on autopilot worrying, she planted absence. When she noticed the sky, she planted presence. Everything became practice. Every moment a choice about what to plant. This is the practical heart of the Buddha's teaching. Not grand gestures. The thousands of small choices you make daily. The tone with the barista. The attention to a friend. The response to criticism. These are the seeds. These shape your field. Let me share another story. Carlos worked in a high-pressure office. He came home exhausted and irritable, snapping at family. A vicious cycle. One day, his daughter asked, "Daddy, why are you always angry at us?" Carlos realized he wasn't angry at them. He was angry at work. But he was bringing that anger home. Planting seeds of hurt where he most wanted love. He made a small change. On his drive home, he started taking 5 minutes to sit in the car before walking in. He noticed tension. Took deep breaths. Reminded himself his family wasn't the enemy. He shifted intention from reacting to arriving. That 5 minutes changed everything. Not because it erased stress, but because it interrupted the pattern. It gave a moment of choice. He could plant a different seed. Walk in as a father, not an exhausted employee. His family noticed. His daughter ran to greet him again. Carlos discovered small seeds, planted consistently, transform entire landscapes. This is the actionable wisdom. You don't have to fix everything. Just make one small different choice today. Another tomorrow. Small choices become new habits. New habits become new character. New character becomes a new life. Here's your practice. Pick one small moment today. First sip of coffee. Walking through your door. The pause before responding. In that moment, be fully present. Feel your body. Take a breath. Choose your intention. That's it. One seed planted with awareness. Do that tomorrow too. Don't check results. Just keep planting. The field knows what to do. Your only job is to show up and plant with awareness. Let's take a final breath together. Just this one. Feel it completely. The air entering, leaving. This moment, right now, contains everything you need. We've traveled far together. From the Victorian invention of cosmic justice to the field of your own mind. From blaming yourself for suffering to planting seeds with awareness. From trying to earn good karma to glimpsing freedom beyond karma altogether. We began with a question. What did I do to deserve this? That question, as natural as it feels, is built on a misunderstanding. It assumes a cosmic judge. It assumes life should be fair. The Buddha set all of that aside. He pointed to a different inquiry. Not, what did I do to deserve this? But, what is my intention right now, in response to this? Not, why is this happening, but, how can I meet this with awareness? This is not passive. This is radically responsible. Responsible not for the hailstorms, but for your garden. Not for the past, but for the seeds you plant now with every thought, every word, every deed. Let me leave you with a final story. A woman came to her teacher in great distress. Her life had fallen apart. Her marriage ended. Her health failed. Her business collapsed. She was drowning in the question why. The teacher listened. Then he handed her a glass of water with a pinch of salt at the bottom. Drink this, he said. She took a sip. It's salty at the bottom, she said. Stir it, the teacher said. She stirred. The salt dissolved. She drank again. Now it's salty throughout, she said. The salt is your suffering, the teacher said. In a small glass of water, it's overwhelming. But if you pour that water into a large lake, the salt disappears. The lake is still fresh. The salt is there, but diluted beyond recognition. What is the lake? She asked. Your awareness, he said. Suffering is real. Pain is real. Loss is real. But when met with vast awareness, it loses its power to define you. The salt doesn't disappear. But the lake remains fresh. This is the path. Not eliminating suffering. Expanding awareness until suffering is just one small taste in a vast ocean of presence. The Buddha didn't teach you how to win at karma. He taught you to see through it. Not to become a perfect person, but to realize you were never the person you thought you were. Not to get what you want, but to be free from the wanting itself. So here you are. The field is yours. The seeds are yours. The moment is yours. What will you plant? Not for reward. Not for punishment. Not for cosmic credit. Just because planting wisely is what a wise person does. Just because kindness is its own fulfillment. Just because awareness, cultivated moment after moment, gradually becomes liberation. Thank you for walking this path with me. May your planting be wise. May your harvest be freedom. May you rest as the vast lake, not the small glass of salt water. Until next time. This concludes our journey. Thank you for being here.